Yeah.
Any ideas? I know it's not an easy thing. None of these things are easy things. They're discussions. They're things you need to try to think the best way through, and you're not going to have perfect answers. And having nonviolence training and be prepared for nonviolence doesn't mean things are going to work right. Doesn't mean you're going to get the solution you want. It just can help. Yeah. Did you have a question? Okay. Big decision. So. Again, you've got big decisions to make. It's your hard job. It's something that I can't help you with very much because I'm an outsider. I'm not involved. Nonviolence trainers have this tension. On the one hand, we want to make sure everybody's safe, but on the other hand, we don't want to tell you not to do what you want to do. You guys need to make the decisions of what you want to do. There are groups. Some groups prepare for events and are very elaborate. They organize bolts and locks and chains, and there are groups that plan really elaborate, like a military operation, saying we're going to confront the police and we're going to stand our ground and we're going to do this, like at the farm in downtown Los Angeles. They were people who were there and decided we're not going to give up our property. We're not going to give up the turf. They went through a very elaborate things. They would do chains. They would put their arms inside pipes so it was difficult to cut the chains. They were removed. It took pretty much all one day. It took a whole day for the police. And that was 2 years ago, 3 years?
Yeah.
The farm. It took the police. There were probably about 10 or 12 people who were standing their ground to try to protect their property, and the police cleared them out in about a day. They took hundreds of police. They had 300 police there probably, and bulldozers and everything. So it's not for me to say what you should do. You need to decide what makes sense, what pushes your agenda the best, sends your message the best, and what allows you to go forward after the police hit. Because that's, I want to keep pushing that. I'm sure that's what you want to do. You want to figure out, okay, the police are probably going to come. What are we going to do then, and what are we going to do the next day to make sure the movement keeps going, to make sure Riverside is still pushing the Occupy movement. So, safeties. I've already started talking a little bit about categories of people. That's part of your decision is who's going to risk arrest, who's not. How are you going to avoid risking arrest? It sounds like when they hit last time, they didn't pay any attention to where people were standing or what people were doing.
Well, actually, mostly the only people that got arrested were the ones that were impeding them from taking down a certain canopy, whereas the people on the other side of that same canopy were not arrested because they weren't in between the cops and the canopy. You know what I'm saying? So,
yeah, but we had people all the way around the canopy, so we had no idea where that interception point was going to happen. They gathered up in a corner.
Yeah,
and along with a lot of other people, thought they were going to leave. I thought they're not going to, take our food. We're really about food, and are they really going to do that? No, I don't think so, right? Yeah. But then all of a sudden, they made a formation, and it came at one point of the line. Yeah. There would have been no way for us to predict what side that was, and I actually disagree. I think they did target a side of the canopy that they felt had a lot of females on it. Yeah. That side does have a lot of females. Right. So, but I think it wasn't the side closest to them. They went diagonally
I thought they came from there.
They came from there, but they came to the far, no, they didn't come straight in. They came diagonally if this is a square, the closest corner to them would have been the upper right-hand corner, and they came to the upper left-hand corner, where there happened to be 3 females right there, and small, Catherine, and Jasmine,
Danny?
Catherine, Danny, and
Breezy.
They're all under 100 pounds, smaller folks.
And Danny and Breezy were injured.
Right.
They might have made a tactical decision.
Go for the women first.
Go for the weakest, what they considered the weakest point.
Well, Yes, that was suggested. Someone, because again, we didn't have time to plan and prepare.
Right.
So someone right sort of at the moment sort of said, oh, should we go boy, girl in the human chain?
However, the problem with that was we had tall people and short people, so then they had to kind of shuffle everybody. to
So
the
then when
opposite
it got
side.
shuffled back around to where everyone was more comfortable with their whose arm they were holding, there ended up being 4 or 5 women together, and that was the weak point that the police came into.
Someone said, I'm not a lawyer, and don't take anything I say as coming from a lawyer, but I heard recently that in Occupy movements, they've been charging people who lock arms with assault.
They have.
Which, it seems strange, but
Because that seems
Berkeley
like
did that.
resisting arrest to me, but not to the level of...
Berkeley said they considered it violence. Actually.
Yeah, and the officer, I was the one that he mentioned earlier that talked to some officers. I talked to the Latino Police Association, and there were 12 people that responded, and 10 of those 12 people said that they use assault and battery all the time as, like, you look at them cross-eyed and it's assault. I mean, the police know that is a difficult thing. It's a loophole. It's a loophole that they can use at any time. If they don't have cause to search you, they can say assault. They can just do it. And they can.
so again, it's something you guys kind of have seen what they do, and you kind of have to make the decision on how you're going to do it. I heard that at least one somebody who was photographing things got harassed by the police. So
I didn't want to be part of the human change. I didn't want to be arrested. I was going to expect humanity. And when I couldn't stand under the stress, that's when I started getting that really, like, I couldn't control my emotions, and I was just yelling at one of the officers who happened to be right there in front of me, because I was go ahead and take the guy with the next guy, and his last name was Neil. And it seems like I was yelling. It seems like I might have annoyed him to the point that he didn't like him. He took it personal rather than just being an event. He took it personal. He directed 2 other. I remember it was at least 1 SWAT team member and an officer who arrested me, but I think it was more than 2 people.
It was 3. I was standing right next to you. Yeah.
Did they tell you what it was they considered assault?
She wasn't even engaging in the assault at the time that they arrested her.
Yeah.
That had been way earlier, like 20 minutes, 15 minutes earlier. They had already arrested the 11. Things were already calming down, and she was on her phone, texting on her phone, and they literally came behind. He went behind her and pointed at her like this. And I was standing next to her and saw him pointing at her. He points at her like this. 3 officers come and whack her hands around her back. Dropped her phone on the floor. She didn't have time to close her phone or nothing. They just grabbed her arms. And then she's like, what are you arresting me for? I didn't do anything. I'm not part of the human chain. And he goes, I'm arresting you for assault. You assaulted me. She's like, and then he's pointing in her face. You assaulted me. Like, he's trying to tell her, this is what you did to me, now I'm doing it to you. Took her like that. So it is a change at all.
So that's a concern for, even as you divide yourselves up,
Right.
people who are willing to risk
Right.
arrest and people are not, it won't always work.
It won't work.
And that happens.
I think the one lesson from that is don't do any pointing in the cop's face, because they consider that assault.
Yeah, it's
Yeah, I don't think that's the lesson. The point is that they can say assault whether you're pointing or not. Just like he said, if you brush up against them, that's battery. I mean,
We're trying to give them less and less and less cause.
Yeah,
That's right.
If they want to, don't do it. But
so. So another issue that you had on Sunday was trying to help others who are being assaulted by the police. So that's something you should talk about ahead of time. Talk about what you want to do. I mean, if it's people who have agreed to risk arrest and are committed to what they're doing as a nonviolence protest, that should affect how you respond when police do what they do to them. It's your decision to make, but it relates to who's decided to risk arrest and not, how you follow up on that. Are you going to then respond when it appears to you that the police are using excessive force, which they seem to have a tendency, for hundreds of years, they seem to have a tendency to use excessive force when they're arresting people who aren't resisting. I guess it has to do with their training and their psychology and stuff like that. But that's another thing to discuss. What are we going to do if we see somebody else being beaten or harassed by or really being arrested in a more violent way than necessary. What are we going to do? So that's something to talk about.
And
Should be
that's why
recorded.
I reacted in that manner. And that's why I reacted in that manner, because my friend was under a very disgraceful position. And a few days before that, a police officer had killed a dog in the same position. So what I was thinking is, oh my gosh, he's going to not die because it's bigger, but have like brain damage, brain injury, because he was like really red and couldn't even talk. And so I lost control. And I said,
Yeah, the officer's knee was on his head. He was on his head on him. It was hard to take. Really hard to take.
That is their procedure for arresting. It's just they don't need to put their entire body weight on you. But that is their procedure for arresting someone. So.
and he had his arms like this, so I mean, he wasn't resistant at all. I mean, the weight of the police officer, I mean, it just seemed like he was putting all his force on him, like, and he wasn't resisting. He wasn't trying to get out of it, you know, it was just very disturbing to see that.
So it might be, as part of the discussion, is people who do agree to risk arrest, what they want. You know, kind of hear them. You know, when under what circumstances do they feel that they'll need help or that's right. It's hard to know ahead of time, but it's just another thing to think about discussing.
I mean, what do you do when a person is like that and there's no way that you can get in because they keep blocking you? I mean, you couldn't even videotape anything because they keep blocking what's happening because they don't want evidence, so that they just laying up together so we can't see, so we can't record.
Probably one thing to try, which is hard to do, is try to get their badge numbers, try to get their names or badge numbers if possible. It's hard. They sometimes are different. Sometimes I've actually seen them cover them sometimes.
They had them covered.
They're all covered?
Yeah, there were about, I think we counted 4 officers that had their badge names covered. No, like
No, with those vests that they were wearing, the ones in green, because those vests did cover up whereas the officers that were in black or blue, whatever it is, their names were visible because they weren't wearing those vest things.
some of them actually had things like covering their names. Like I think
I've seen
I
that.
looked at that.
I don't know. I actually don't know. We should ask a lawyer. They do it. I don't know whether it's legal or not.
Someone brought it up at the police review commission because they said that RPD is required to have their name and badge number showing at all times, but the other ones, the sheriff or SWAT team or whoever, they are not required. They don't have that requirement, so that they can cover their names if they choose to.
One thing I noticed with all of the SWAT officers and riot officers, they all had Riverside PD patches on their arm sleeve. So they were all Riverside PD. So if they were covering their name and badge numbers, then they were violating policy.
But they weren't.
Yeah.
When you have a planned event, do you get names and birth dates and contact numbers ahead of time?
Absolutely.
Because we're trying to work on that now because there was such a panic that day. We were trying to get names and things. And
It's a horrible feeling when you don't know who and where they're taking us.
And I think it almost escalated the panic. So
What we usually do when we're planning something is get the names and a contact of someone else, a family member of somebody, so you can tell them, oh, we just saw so-and-so get picked up, get taken away. They're taken to the police station. So that helps, and then you'll have like if you have a centralized place where these are the people who were taken, and we think they were taken to this location. And these are phone numbers that they asked us to call.
I believe that we put an email address on the OccupyRiverside.org site for those that plan to get arrested to leave their personal information and a contact number of someone, blah, 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 so that we have that information for that eventuality.
Right.
I think that everyone, even if they're not planning on getting arrested,
We should have a database of all of everybody who's participating.
I could have been just like her. And of course, I had no intention of getting arrested, but I could have been.
I think the only reason they didn't arrest her is because they thought she was media.
yeah,
Really?
She looks, she looks like.
So we were at red and green. What is red and green?
Well, it's just you need some way to figure out who's risking arrest and who's not. So however you decide to.
We had that implemented that day because I heard somebody saying, "Who's green? Who's green?" And then people ran over to the people's kitchen when they.
Doesn't always work, but At least think about it. It's like, how do we decide, how do we divide who's what, and where are people going to be?
What I thought was funny about it was they said, who's green? And all the green people ran over, but all the red people were like, oh, heck no. The red people ran over there too. Like all the people who said they weren't going to get arrested were just as fast.
Well, because they were
Is green the designation for those that are willing to get arrested?
Yeah.
Hey, that's not the way I do it.
We're supposed to take
Green
a
light,
back
red
seat,
light.
But none of the red people took a back seat. Our green people were right there. The green people.
And
Excuse me, we got a situation.
Pablo. Yeah, this is our challenge.
This is our resident crazy. I don't want to be insulted.